Welcome to another Colors of Prog. And so this time out, I'm doing the much promised Japanese progressive rock and psychedelic music version of the program. So starting out with this one. This is Speed, Glue, and Shinky. Shinki Chen was a guitar player, Japanese guitar player, and he was a session guitarist, and he worked out of Japan, and he worked out of London. He's a very prolific guitar player. So he got because of his prolific work as a guitar player, he actually got a deal in Japan, and he did this Shinki, Chen and Friends CD, which is very popular amongst the progressive rock psychedelic psychedelic rock fans, 1971. So he did Speed, Glue, and Shinky in 1971 also, and this one's kind of interesting. So he's the guitar player, and Masayoshi Kabi is the bass player. Interestingly enough, so he has Joey Smith as on vocals, drums, and the Moog synthesizer. And Michael Hannibal, also on bass, vocals, and keyboards. Now, both these guys, Joey and Michael, are Filipino. And how they got together with Shinki Chen, big mystery, I guess. Shinki's doing lots of sessions, and these guys are probably in London, Japan, doing sessions. You know, they came over from the Philippines. And so, what's the deal with this? So, it's very interesting. So it's got this CD on Progressive Line out of Australia. This is the reissue, of course, of the original 1971 album. And it's still very hard to get. It's very interesting because the majority of this stuff is, I would say, not progressive rock. But wait, there's more. This band sounds like the Stooges. Bluesy rocks, not far from Atomic Rooster, not far from Colosseum. Now, Colosseum had horns and a terrific drummer, not sliding a drummer in this band at all, but there's definitely a bluesy undercurrent to this stuff. And Shinki Chen's a very good guitar player. What's really of interest to progressive rock fans are see that, tracks 13 to 14. So Joey Smith, yes, that is his name. So he actually is credited with composing most of the songs here. And this one's a bit of a suite. It's called Sun, Planets, Life, Moon, and then Song for an Angel. This is heavy progressive music. I mean, you're hearing most of the tracks on this album, and it's very blues rock, it's very psychedelic, and then suddenly we're slammed with this heavy, you know, the Moog, the other keyboards, really cool stuff. So I could see where prog rock fans would definitely want to latch onto this. For these 4 tracks alone, it's an extended suite too. It's about a side long if you, pardon me, had an album. Now here's where the thing gets really interesting, is that after this, Joey Smith and Michael Hannibal went back to the Philippines, and they joined Wally Gonzalez, who was a very well-known guitar player, and they did a power trio they created a power trio called the Juan De La Cruz Band. And the earliest Juan De La Cruz Band albums in the Philippines were akin to almost like Cream. Very, really power rock style. And Wally Gonzalez is known as one of the premier Pinoy rock guitarists. And so what begat from Speed, Glue, and Shinky, and then eventually became other things. These tracks are really cool. Sun, Plants, Life and Moon. And then there's a connection to Filipino rock in here as well. I'm really curious though, since Joey Smith did do a lot of the songs, he did create a lot of these songs here, with Shinky Chen on guitar. I'm curious what the Juan De La Cruz Band material sounds like. So I'm going to have to investigate that further. Definitely worth it for that. It's so what do I compare that suite to? I would say very much space rock. Ashra Temple sound? Very possible. So where did they come up with the Speed, Glue, and Shinky thing? So I guess it was okay for the original Japanese label. There were songs Sniffin' and Snortin' Part 1 with Vitamin C, and Sniffin' and Snortin' Part 2. So Speed, Glue. Yeah, we don't really need to say much more to elaborate on that, except that this is heavy Stooges type, early Stooges type rock, and then suddenly there's this very much, it's about 15-20 minutes long, of this Ashra Temple type sounding suite. So very rare. Look around for it, you can find it. It says on this Australian remaster from 2011, I believe, that it was 24-bit digitally remastered. A lot of these sounds hit and miss audio-wise, but it's still very good, very interesting to have. Next, we have a Japanese OBI. It's called Friends. You know, you all know these, all you OBI collectors. So this is credited, I did some research on this, as being recorded in 1998. Absolutely not. I believe this was recorded possibly around 1972 or pre-1972, re-released in 1998. But since it's on a Japanese label, some of the English is foreign to me. So what is this? So Tetsu Yamachi was another session musician, also based in Japan and London. Pretty much he was a bass player. And in 1972, he joined Paul Kossoff, Simon Kirke, and Rabbit Bundrick, who was playing keyboards with The Who, and he would go on to do that for decades. They did a free, Kossoff, Kirke, pardon me, were in the band free. And so they did an offshoot, Kossoff, Kirke, Tetsuo, and Rabbit. You know, Bundrick, John Bundrick, I believe his name was, he went by the name of Rabbit as keyboardist. And so they released this album, and then Tetsu joined Free for the final Free album, Heartbreaker, in 1973. But wait, the story doesn't end yet. Tetsu joined the Faces, yes, the Faces, also known as Rod Stewart and the Faces. This is after the Steve Marriott Faces. And he joined them in 73 and stayed with them till the end, late 1975, and then Ronnie Wood left to join the Rolling Stones. Tetsuo's bass playing can be heard on Pool Hall Richard, one of the first singles featuring him as bass player. And there's a live album, a missy one, but he did all the Faces tours. They toured a lot. So he was certainly interesting as a bass player. The story goes, Tetsuo's command of English wasn't the best. I don't know. I wasn't there, but so they said Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood, again here, say they couldn't tell if he was enjoying himself. He looks very much like he was enjoying himself in all the band photos I've seen and footage. So what's on Friends, and why do I think it was recorded much earlier than that? I'm still trying to figure out the progressive rock connection here. So this is pretty much friends of his who got together and they recorded a covers album. So we have a really eclectic bunch of music here. We have Sea of Madness by Neil Young, I Shan't Be Released, Dylan, The Weight by the band, so on and so forth. There's 2 Elton John songs on here. The singing, which is in English, is credited to Hiroshi Sagawa and Ken Narita. And Ken Narita, anime and Japanese live-action sci-fi fans might know that name. He was an actor, primarily featured in Mask, like Ultraman type shows. And he was known as a dubbing actor. He would dub into Japanese language some sci-fi shows released to Japan. And when they weren't doing live on set Japanese language recording, he would then be a dubbing actor. He also, Ken Narita also sings on this and plays banjo apparently. The most vaguely proggy song on this is Freak Out, which is a tune credited to Tetsuo. But really, I just don't know. This is one of those fall into the cracks kind of things by association. So it's not even Japanese psychedelic rock. It's not even, I would say, far be it from Prog. It's just a very interesting thing. If you're a free completist or a Faces completist, Tetsu is now retired, but if you want to have everything, it's good for that. So we have Far Out. This is our next Japanese band. And so Fumio Miyashita was pretty much the brains, the sole person behind Far Out. And this preceded the Far Out family band. Sorry, I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Many apologies. The Far East family band. So Far Out. Actually, so on the CD, it just says Far Out, hence my confusion. But the actual CD says Far East Family Band. So Far Out, again, Fumio Miyashita. And this was pretty much his baby. He's a Japanese guitar player and multi-instrumentalist actually. And Too Many People is an 18-minute track, and Nihonjin is a 20-minute track. So, irregardless of what this says, this is actually the Nihonjin Far Out album. There are 7 bonus tracks, as you can see. This was re-released on the German Buy or Die Records, under license from Tamisha Music. So the bonus tracks are, interestingly enough, the first Far East family band album, Cave Down to Earth, which is very hard to get. And they're in Japanese vocals. So what does this sound like? Psychedelic, saucer full of secrets. Think saucer full of secrets, Floyd type material. If you are want to stretch the prog rock connection. The thing I found really interesting, especially with the two long cuts, Too Many People in Nihonjin, is that it's a lot of ascending and descending guitar chords and notes. Da 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 da. It just goes on for a while. The material from Cave Down to the Earth is interesting, and it's interesting to hear it in Japanese, because when they did release as the Far East Family Band, the Cave Down to Earth, those vocals were in English. So it's another very difficult, hard to find CD. Far out. From the same band, they rechristened as the Far East Family Band, Nipponjin. I love this thing. Join our mental phase sound. Okay. All these tracks are new versions of songs that were on Cave Down to Earth and Far Out. Now I just showed you Far Out. And Cave Down to Earth was the first Far East Family Band album, and they re-recorded everything, and it sounds completely different. So what am I talking about? So after Far Out, the guitar player created this new band with some new members, and Masanori Takahashi, also known as Kitaro. And if those of you are familiar with Kitaro, Kitaro, he also started out with some very heavy proggish, symphonic prog material before moving on to a sort of new age sound. But Kitaro was a member of the Far East Family Band. And so Nipponjin's re-recordings of the songs from Far Out and Cave Down to Earth are really interesting on this, because it's definitely a different sound here now. It's now the Cave Down to Earth material, I said, that were the bonus tracks on the last CD, are now sung in English here, as they were on the original Cave Down to Earth. So it's very interesting. More of the sound is less psychedelic than it was in the previous album. And you could hear some, maybe Tangerine Dream, Pink Floyd. So why would we? Well, Klaus Schulze, who was a member of Tangerine Dream and Nashville Temple, another connection, produced this album, and probably was instrumental in having the band re-record the previous album, as well as the two tracks of the Far Out album. Tenkujin, Nipponjin was from 1975, by the way. Tenkujin is from 1977. Still credited to the Far East Family Band, still produced by Klaus Schulze. And it has a more symphonic prog sound. Guitarro had left by now. His last recording with this band was Parallel Worlds, which is very difficult to come by. I'm still trying to locate a copy. This has a much more Pink Floyd, Tangerine Dream camel sound. Right now the band was still Fumio Mashishita, Yujin Harada on percussion, Hirohito Fukushima on guitar and vocals, and Akira Fukusawa on bass. And it's still very good. It's definitely, as I just said, it has a symphonic prog sound. And, you know, it's more what you would expect when you go look up this band in like Prog Rock Archives or other places. It's very good. I quite like it. And probably out of all the stuff for those into progressive rock, I'd recommend Tenkujin. But of course the other ones are certainly, if you're a completist and you're interested to see how Japanese psychedelia became progressive for at least one band, there's that. All worth checking out. All worth checking out. Another thing about Tenkujin, there's only 6 songs, and none of them are quite long, which is an interesting thing for the Far East Family Band. There's one track on side 1 that's 7 minutes long, but the other tunes are about 3 to 4. And side 2, there's one tune about 7 minutes, one tune about 9 minutes. But again, Parallel Worlds is 1976. It's supposed to be the more heaviest, also produced by Klaus Schulze, heaviest space rock, German krautrock influence. You know, take from that what you will. So we're going to move on to something that I mentioned in one of the earliest of these shows. It is Yuka and Chronoship. This is a third Planetary Chronicles from 2015. And Yuka Funakoshi is a keyboardist and vocalist. She sings in Japanese and English and wordless sounds. You guys know what I'm talking about. Takashi Miyazawa is the guitar player, Shun Taguchi bass, Iko Tanaka is the drummer. This is a mostly instrumental symphonic prog sound, very much Yes influenced. I would definitely say so. And also, from what I could hear, there's a bit of a goth tone to it too. Great backing. Now, because of the pandemic, their new album was delayed, but I understand they're working on another one. Another Yuka and the Chronoship album I do recommend is Ship. So the other one was 2015. Ship is from 2018. And this is more of a sci-fi type retro steam thing going on there. What's really interesting about this album is that Yuka Funakoshi shares vocals with Hiroyuki Izuda, guest female vocalist, and Sonia Christina from Curved Air. Sonia can clearly be singing on one tune and is supposed to be doing backing vocals on 2 tracks. So yeah, symphonic prog, Japanese style, more under the radar. I guess all the stuff I discussed today is under the radar, but So this is pretty much not what I've been usually discussing as far as Japanese bands go, but I thought mention these. You'll find these listed in various progressive rock places, and you want to learn more about them, you can listen to snippets on Spotify, Amazon, and the like. And for more of these harder to find bands like Shinky Chen and the Far East Family Band, you could find things on YouTube sometimes. So be well out there. I'll be back soon.